Okay, here's that promised lesson, lesson 21. This lesson is called Scientific Notation and Two Statements of Equality. So let's first of all look at scientific notation. This is supposed to be a review, so they jump in your book pretty much right to the first example, but let's just talk about what scientific notation is. First of all, if we have something like this, 412.036 times 10 squared, this is the same thing as multiplying the number by 100. So when you multiply with a positive exponent, your number is going to get bigger. And you don't have to put that in your calculator, like 412.036 times 100. When you multiply or divide by any multiple of 10, all you do is move your decimal point. So since it's going to get bigger, we're basically just moving our decimal point over two places, and presto, we get this answer right here. If we have negative, like this one, times 10 to the negative 4, it's the same as dividing by 1 with 4 zeros. So it'd be 10,000. It'd be like dividing by that. So when we're dividing, we move our decimal point to the left, because the number is going to get smaller. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have to put a 0 there to hold the place. And so we get a smaller number. Now what scientific notation is, it's where you put the decimal point after the first non-zero number. So if I have this number 6,000, the decimal point, we don't put it there, but it's assumed to be right there to the right. So to put it in scientific notation, you have to move the decimal point after the first non-zero number. So we're going to have to move the decimal point over 1, 2, 3 places. So when we move it to the left, it's going to be a positive 3, because you want to be able to get back to what you started with. See, this is going to make it times 1,000, which will put us back to 6,000. So in scientific notation, whenever we move the decimal point to the left, it's going to be plus. And down here, we're going to have to get it into scientific notation. We have to move it over 3 places to the right. If we move it to the right, it's going to be negative. So this one, in order to get it in scientific notation, the decimal point has to move over 1, 2, 3 places to the right. We already have times 10 to the 8, so what we're going to do is we're going to subtract it right from the 8, and we're going to get 3.0 times 10 to the 5th. Okay, that's a quick review of how to do scientific notation. Let's just try a little bit more complicated problem. This one is a big mess, and you have to put your answer in scientific notation. The way the book does it, and I probably would agree, is you put each factor in scientific notation, and then we'll be able to multiply. So let's do this one here. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it in scientific notation. So I'm going to move it over 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right. And remember, if we move it to the right, it's going to be negative. So it's going to be negative 4 places. So we're going to get, for our first term, our first factor is 3.0 times 10. We moved it over 4 to the right, so we're subtracting 4 from our decimal point, would be to the negative 10. Next one, we're going to have to move our decimal point over 1, 2, 3 places to the left, so it's going to be plus 3. So it's going to be 4.0 times 10 to the 3rd power. Okay, we have 2 in scientific notation. Now let's do the next one. We have to move this one over 1, 2, 3 places, and we're moving it to the right, so it's going to be minus 3. So that's going to be 6.0 times 10 to the 12th power, because we're going to subtract 3 from 15. So if there was already an exponent, you either have to add or subtract depending if you move to the left or the right. And then finally, this one has to move over. It starts there. We're going 1, 2, 3 places to the left, so it's going to be plus 3, and we have to add that on to the 4. So it's going to be 2.0 times 10 to the 7. Once you get it into that place, then we can multiply our numbers together. So 3 times 4 would be 12 times 10, and now we add our exponents. Negative 10 and 3 would be negative 7. And then we do the same thing to the denominator. So we're going to get 6 times 2 will give us 12 times 10. We're going to have 12 plus 7 is 19. And we can keep going. 12 divided by 12 would be 1 times 10. And I'm going to bring this up to the top and make it 10 to the negative 19. So it would be 10 to the negative 26 power. And that actually isn't scientific notation because the decimal point's after the first non-zero number. So this is your final answer. Hopefully that was a review from last year. Let's try something that's not quite so review. Move back over here. Hold on a second. Okay, this is called, the book calls these two statements of equality. So these are basically word problems that are going to have two variables. So this one says the ratio of two numbers is 3 to 4. That's going to be your first equation. We have two numbers, the ratio is 3 to 4. The second equation and their sum is 84, so we're just going to add them together. So we need to pick variables. We're going to have a ratio of two numbers is 3 to 4. So I'm just going to call them n and d. Numerator over denominator equals 3 to 4. That's our first equation. Our second equation says their sum is 84. So n plus d equals 84. Now you have two equations with two unknowns, so we can just use substitution. I'm going to cross multiply these. We're going to get 4n equals 3d. And we could solve this for one of them. Let's just solve for n. n equals 84 minus d. And I'm going to substitute in. So we're going to get 4 times. N is 84 minus d. So I'm going to replace that n with 84 minus d equals 3d. And we'll use our calculator and figure this one out. So we have 84 times 4, that's 336, minus 4d equals 3d. I'm going to add 4d to both sides. So we get 336 equals 7d. And I'm going to divide both sides by 7d, by 7. And it comes out really nicely. So if we divide both sides by 7, we get d, the denominator, equals 48. And we need the other number. So we go up here, and this would be 48. So subtract 48 from 84. 84 minus 48, and we get our second number is 36. So that's it. Numerator equals 36. So these two numbers, their ratio is 3 to 4, and if you add them together, you get 84. Okay, last problem. This one says the sum of two numbers is 128, and their difference is 44. What are the numbers? So I'm going to call this the large and the small number. So the sum of two numbers is 128. So the large number plus the small number equals 128. Their difference, so the larger one minus the smaller one, is 44. Two equations, two unknowns, easy elimination. So we get 2L equals 172, and if you divide both sides by 2, You get the larger one is 86, and the smaller one would just be, you could just take 86 plus the smaller one equals 128. So you just subtract 186 from both sides, and you get the smaller number equals 42. So these are just two equations. Jake's contributing to the lesson here. You get two equations, two unknowns, and you can solve for what you're looking for. So that is it for lesson 21.